Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship looking at the stars through the big window. His crew had been traveling for 3 months in deep space when they found something strange. The sensors were beeping and showing weird numbers that nobody had ever seen before. "Captain, we have something big out there," said Officer Kate Williams as she looked at her screen with wide eyes. "It's not moving, but it's giving off energy like nothing we know." Jake walked over to see what she meant. On the screen was a shape. That looked like a ship, but it was huge and dark. The metal looked old and worn, like it had been floating in space for a very long time. Strange symbols covered the sides, and they seemed to glow with a soft blue light. "How far away is it?" Jake asked while studying the image. "About 2 miles from us, sir. The energy readings are off the charts, but it's not dangerous." "Just different," Kate replied while pushing more buttons on her control panel. Jake called his team together. Dr. Lisa Hayes was the ship's doctor and scientist. Ben Carter was the engineer who kept their ship running. Rick Barnes was their best pilot and could fly through anything. Amy Sullivan worked with computers and could hack into any system they found. "What do you all think?" Jake asked as they looked at the mystery ship on the main screen. "I've never seen metal like that," Ben said while scratching his head. "It's not from Earth or any planet we know about. The way it bends light is impossible with our science." Dr. Hayes was more excited than worried. "This could be the discovery of our lifetime. We need to get closer and see if anyone is still alive." "Over there." "What if it's dangerous?" Rick asked while crossing his arms. "We don't know who built that thing or why it's out here." Amy was already working on her computer trying to scan the strange ship. "I'm not picking up any weapons, but there are life signs. Very weak, but still there. Someone or something is alive on that ship." Jake made his decision quickly. "We're going to help whoever is over there. That's what humans do. We help others even when we don't know them." They moved their ship closer to the mysterious vessel. Up close, it was even more impressive. The hull was covered in patterns that seemed to move and shift when they weren't looking directly at them. Small lights blinked along the surface like the ship was still breathing. "I'm finding an airlock," Amy said while guiding their ship to connect with the strange vessel. "The systems are different, but I think I can make them work together." The 2 ships locked together with a soft thump. Jake put on his spacesuit along with Dr. Hayes and Ben. They would go first to see what they could find. The airlock opened and they stepped into the alien ship. The corridors were tall and curved like they were inside a living thing instead of a machine. The walls had a soft glow that lit their way as they walked deeper inside. "The air is breathable," Dr. Hayes said after checking her instruments. "Whatever. Species built this ship needs oxygen just like we do." They found what looked like a medical bay filled with strange machines and tanks full of glowing liquid. In the center was a large pod made of clear crystal. Inside they could see a figure floating in blue liquid. Jake's breath caught in his throat. The being in the pod looked almost human, but was clearly something else. She had silver skin that seemed to shine with its own light. Her hair was white like starlight and moved slowly in the liquid like she was underwater. Her face was beautiful but alien with features that were too perfect to be human. "She's alive," Dr. Hayes whispered while reading her scanner. "Her heart is beating very slowly but steady. I think she's in some kind of deep sleep." "Can we wake her up?" Jake asked while looking at the sleeping being. "I think so, but we need to be careful. Her body chemistry is different from ours. If we make a mistake, we could kill her." They worked for hours to figure out how to safely open the pod. Amy helped from their ship by studying the alien computer systems. Finally, they found the right controls and the crystal pod began to open with a soft hiss. The blue liquid drained away and the being's eyes slowly opened. They were silver like liquid metal and seemed to look right through Jake into his soul. She sat up slowly and looked around at the 3 humans staring at her dot, then something amazing happened. Jake heard a voice in his head that wasn't his own. It was soft and musical like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Thank you for waking me. I have waited so long for someone to find me. My name is Zara, and I am the last of my people." Dr. Hayes nearly dropped her scanner. "Did you all hear that?" She's talking directly into our minds. Zara looked sad as she climbed out of the pod. She was tall and graceful with movements like flowing water. I can speak your words too, but this way is easier. I have been sleeping for 3,000 of your years waiting for the right people to find me. 3,000 years, Ben said with his mouth hanging open. That's impossible. Nothing could survive that long. My people were masters of life science. We could make our bodies last much longer than yours. But even we could not survive what happened to us. Zara's mental voice became filled with pain and sorrow. Jake wanted to help her feel better. What happened to your people? Where are they now? Dead. All dead except for me. A great sickness came from the dark between stars. It was made by our enemies to kill every last one of us. I was the only one who escaped because I was already in the sleeping pod when it came. She walked to a wall and touched it. Pictures appeared showing beautiful worlds with silver cities that reached into the sky. Millions of beings like Zara lived and worked together in harmony. This was my home. We called ourselves Illuminari. And we lived on 47 worlds. We were builders and healers who helped other species grow and learn. Then the pictures changed to show dark ships attacking the silver cities. The Luminari fought back, but the enemy was too strong. One by one their worlds went dark until only empty planets remained. The Devourers came like a plague of metal and hunger. They consumed everything we were and left nothing behind. I carry the last memories of my people in my body along with their genetic patterns. Jake felt his heart break for this lonely being. You're truly alone. Yes, but I have hope. Your species shares enough similarities with mine that we might be able to create new life together. I could rebuild my people using human volunteers as the foundation. The three humans looked at each other in shock. This was beyond anything they had imagined when they first detected the strange ship. You want us to help you have children? Diahes asked carefully. Not just children. A new species that combines the best of both our peoples. Humans have something my people lost long ago. The courage to explore and take risks. Together we could create beings who are stronger than either of us alone. Jake knew this decision was too big for him to make alone. This would change everything. For both species, we need to talk to our leaders about this. It's not something we can decide right now. Zara nodded with understanding. I have waited 3,000 years. I can wait a little longer. But please know that time is not unlimited. The Devourers still exist somewhere in the dark, and they will come again when they sense new life. As they prepared to return to their ship, Jake looked back at Zara standing alone in her crystal chamber. He wondered if they were about to help. Save a dying species or change humanity forever. Maybe both things could be true at the same time. The news spread through human space like wildfire. Every planet, every station, and every ship was talking about the discovery of Zara and her request. Jake found himself at the center of the biggest debate in human history. Back on Earth, the government called emergency meetings. Scientists argued with politicians while religious leaders demanded to be heard. Some people were excited about the possibilities while others were terrified of the unknown consequences. Dr. Lisa Hayes became the strongest voice supporting Zara's plan. She spent hours studying the genetic information that Zara had shared with them. The data was incredible and showed advances in biology that humans wouldn't reach for centuries. This is our chance to eliminate genetic diseases forever, Lisa told the Earth Council during a heated session. The Luminari understood DNA in ways we can barely imagine. Working with Zara could help us cure cancer, extend human lifespans, and maybe even prevent aging. But Ben Carter led the opposition with equal passion. He had seen what Zara could do with her strange powers, and it worried him. She could change matter just by touching it and seemed to read their thoughts even when they tried to keep secrets. What if we're creating something that will replace us? Ben argued during the same council session. These hybrid children might be stronger and smarter than normal humans. What happens to us then? Do we become the inferior species that gets pushed aside? The debates raged for weeks. Religious groups called the plan an abomination against nature. They said humans were meant to stay human and that mixing with aliens would destroy what made them special. Other religious leaders disagreed and said that helping a dying species was a holy duty. Scientists were split down the middle. Some saw the incredible potential for advancing human knowledge and capability. Others worried about uncontrolled genetic changes that could have terrible side effects generations later. Meanwhile, Jake spent more time with Zara, learning about her people and their amazing civilization. She showed him how the Luminari had lived in harmony with nature instead of fighting against it. Their cities were grown rather than built, and their technology worked with biological systems instead of replacing them. Your people seem too perfect, Jake said one day as they walked through a holographic recreation of a Luminari city. How could such an advanced species be destroyed so completely? Zara's silver eyes darkened with old pain. We were peaceful by nature. When the Devourers first appeared, we tried to communicate with them and find common ground. We offered to share our knowledge and help them find uninhabited worlds to colonize. She gestured, and the beautiful city around them changed to show massive black ships descending from the sky. The Luminari tried to welcome the newcomers but were attacked without warning. We were not warriors. By the time we understood their true nature, it was almost too late. They didn't want to coexist or trade or learn. They only wanted to consume everything we were and add our genetic patterns to their own twisted evolution. Jake watched the holographic battle unfold around them. The Luminari fought desperately, but their peaceful nature had left them unprepared for such complete evil. Their beautiful bioships were torn apart by weapons designed to corrupt and devour living tissue. How did you survive when everyone else died? He asked gently. Luck and sacrifice. My pod was in a research station on the edge of our territory. When the station was attacked, the other scientists used the last of their power to send me into deep space. They died so that someday our people might live again. Back on Earth, the arguments continued. Amy Sullivan had joined Dr. Hayes in supporting the project after studying Luminari computer systems. She was amazed by their integration of organic and digital technology. They don't see a difference between living tissue and computer chips, Amy explained to a group of senators. Their whole civilization was based on the idea that technology should work with life rather than replace it. This could solve our environmental problems and our resource shortages, but the opposition was getting stronger. A group led by Senator William Grant argued that humanity should focus on its own development rather than taking risks with alien genetics. We don't know what we're really dealing with, Grant said during a televised debate. This Zara could be lying about her intentions. Maybe the whole story about being the last survivor is false. What if this is some kind of invasion plan disguised as a plea for help? Jake found himself defending Zara again and again. He had spent enough time with her to know that her grief and loneliness were real. But he also understood the fears of people who had never met her. The situation became more complicated when other alien species learned about the discovery. The Galactic Council called an emergency session to discuss the implications. Representatives from dozens of worlds came to debate whether humans should help rebuild the Luminari. Some species remembered the Luminari with respect and wanted to help. They spoke of ancient treaties and the aid that Luminari scientists had provided during past crises, but other species were afraid. The Luminari were powerful beyond imagination, said Ambassador Korvac from the Theran Empire. If they return in any form, they might try to reclaim their old territories. Our colonies on former Luminari worlds could be in danger. Elder Vixera from the Healer Guild disagreed. The Luminari never conquered anyone. They only helped species develop their potential. If anything, we need their wisdom now more than ever. The debates went on for months while Zara waited patiently on Jake's ship. She spent her time learning about human culture and sharing more knowledge with the scientists who came to study her. But Jake could see the strain was wearing on her. Sometimes I wonder if I should have stayed asleep, she admitted to him one evening as they looked out at the stars. Perhaps it would be better for both our species if I remained the last Luminari. Don't say that, Jake replied firmly. Every species deserves a chance to survive and grow. If we can help you rebuild your people, then we should try. But what if Senator Grant is right? What if helping me changes humanity in ways you can't predict? I would not want to harm the species that showed me such kindness. Jake thought about this for a long time before answering. Every major decision involves risks. When humans first left Earth, some people said we should stay on our home planet where it was safe. But if we had listened to them, we would never have met you or any other species. Slowly, support for the project began to grow. Dr. Hayes organized a group of volunteers who were willing to participate in the first genetic integration experiments. They came from all walks of life: scientists who wanted to advance human knowledge, explorers who craved new experiences, and ordinary people who simply wanted to help a species in need. Among the first volunteers was Amy Sullivan herself. She had become fascinated by Luminary biotechnology and wanted to experience it firsthand. Rick Barnes also volunteered, saying that as a pilot, he had always been interested in pushing boundaries and exploring new frontiers. "I've flown through asteroid fields and around black holes," Rick told the selection committee. Helping create a new species seems like the ultimate adventure. But even as volunteers signed up, the opposition continued to organize. Senator Grant formed a group called Humanity First that demanded the government reject Zara's request entirely. They held rallies on dozens of worlds and collected millions of signatures on petitions. "We should be proud of being human," Grant declared at a massive rally on Mars. "We don't need to become something else to be worthy. We've already proven ourselves by reaching the stars with our own strength and determination." Jake watched the growing divide in human society with concern. He had hoped that his discovery would bring people together around a common goal. Instead, it was tearing them apart with arguments about identity, belonging, and the future of their species. The final decision would come down to a vote by the Earth Council with input from colony worlds and space stations. It was scheduled for exactly 1 year after Zara's discovery. Enough time for everyone to study the implications and make an informed choice. As the vote approached, Jake realized that whatever happened would change everything if humans agreed. To help Zara, they would be taking the first step toward becoming something new. If they refused, they might be condemning an ancient species to final extinction. Zara herself seemed peaceful about whatever decision would come. "I have learned much about your people during this time," she told Jake. "Whatever you choose, I will respect because I have seen the goodness in human hearts. You saved me from eternal loneliness even if you cannot save my species." But Jake wasn't ready to give up hope. He believed that humans and Luminari together could create something beautiful and strong. The question was whether enough people would be willing to take that leap of faith into the unknown. The vote came down to a narrow margin, but humanity chose hope over fear. The Earth Council approved the genetic integration project by just 12 votes. Colony worlds were split almost evenly, with some supporting the plan while others remained opposed, but it was enough to move forward. Jake felt relief wash over him as he told Zara the news. Her silver eyes brightened with the first real joy he had seen from her since she awakened. "Your people have given me the greatest gift possible," she said with her musical mental voice. "The chance to see my species live again, even if they will be different from what they once were." Within weeks, volunteers began arriving at the research station that had been set up in orbit around Earth's moon. Dr. Lisa Hayes led the medical team, while Amy Sullivan worked on integrating Luminari biotechnology with human equipment. The volunteers came from all backgrounds and had many different reasons for wanting to participate. Dr. Kevin Moore was a geneticist who had spent his career studying inherited diseases. His own daughter had died from a genetic condition that might have been preventable with Luminari knowledge. "If we can spare other families the pain, then everything will be worth it," he told the selection committee. Pilot Sarah Kim had always felt different from other humans. She was faster and stronger than normal people and had reflexes that seemed almost supernatural. "Maybe I have some alien DNA already," she joked during her interview. "This could help me understand what makes me special." Engineer David Wells volunteered because he wanted to help build a better future. His colony had been devastated by environmental disasters that Luminari biotechnology might have prevented. We need their knowledge to heal the damage we've done to our worlds, he explained. Zara worked closely with each volunteer to prepare them for the integration process. She had to modify her own biology to create the specialized cells needed. For genetic combination? This was exhausting work that left her weak and pale, but she never complained. The first attempts were both amazing and terrifying. The volunteer subjects underwent changes that seemed impossible according to human science. Their DNA restructured itself while they slept, and their bodies adapted to handle the new genetic patterns. Dr. Moore was among the first to show results. His hair turned silver like Zara's, and his eyes began to reflect light in strange ways. More importantly, his mind could suddenly process genetic patterns that had puzzled him for decades. It's like someone turned on lights in a dark room, he told Dr. Hayes during one of his examinations. I can see how DNA sequences interact with each other on levels I never imagined existed, but the changes came with serious problems. Some volunteers developed organs that didn't work properly in Earth's atmosphere. Others aged at accelerated rates or suffered from genetic instabilities that threatened their lives. Sarah, Kim's enhanced reflexes became so fast that she couldn't control them. She would reach for a cup and accidentally crush it before realizing what was happening. Her nervous system was adapting to process information at superhuman speeds, but her brain hadn't learned how to handle the input. We need to slow down and study each change carefully, Dr. Hayes warned after the third volunteer developed life-threatening complications. We're dealing with forces we don't fully understand. Zara pushed herself harder trying to perfect the integration process. She often worked for days without rest using her own life force to create the biological materials needed for each procedure. Jake worried that she was burning herself out. You're trying to do too much too fast, he told her after finding her collapsed in the laboratory. Your people had thousands of years to develop this technology. We can't expect to master it in months. But time is running short, Zara replied weakly. I can sense something stirring in the deep places between stars. The Devourers are beginning to wake from their long sleep. This news sent chills through the research team. According to Luminary records, the Devourers were not just another alien species but biological weapons created by an extinct civilization. They had been designed to consume other species and use their genetic material to fuel their own twisted evolution. How long before they find us? Jake asked with growing dread. Perhaps years or perhaps months. They follow the scent of new genetic combinations like predators tracking wounded prey. Our work here will eventually draw their attention. Despite the dangers, more volunteers continued to arrive. Word had spread about the enhanced abilities that successful subjects developed. Some people wanted the improvements for selfish reasons, while others genuinely hoped to help defend humanity against future threats. Among the new arrivals was Marine Captain Helen Torres. She had led combat missions on a dozen worlds and understood better than most what humanity might face from hostile aliens. If these Devourers are as dangerous as you say, then we need every advantage we can get, she told Jake during their first meeting. Enhanced soldiers might be the only way to protect our colonies. The integration process continued with mixed results. About half of the volunteers developed useful abilities while the other half suffered from various complications. The successful subjects formed a tight-knit group as they learned to control their new capabilities. Amy Sullivan had volunteered early in the process and showed remarkable adaptation to Luminary biotechnology. Her integration with computer systems became so advanced that she could interface directly with alien databases using only her thoughts. It's like having the internet wired directly into my brain, she explained to fascinated scientists. But instead of just accessing information, I can actually modify programs and create new code using biological processes. Rick Barnes developed the ability to pilot spacecraft using bioelectric fields instead of manual controls. He could merge his consciousness with a ship's systems and fly with precision that no normal human could match. The ship becomes part of my body, he described the experience. I can feel the solar wind on the hull and sense gravitational currents like ocean tides. But success came with a terrible cost. Zara was literally giving pieces of herself to each volunteer. Her silver skin became paler and her movements slower as she used her own genetic material to fuel the transformations. Dr. Hayes tried to convince her to rest, but Zara refused to stop working. "Each day we delay is another day closer to the Devourer's arrival," she insisted. "I must complete as many integrations as possible before my strength fails entirely." The hybrid children from successful integrations began to display abilities that surpassed both parent species. They could manipulate matter at the molecular level, communicate through bioelectric fields, and perceive multiple dimensions of reality simultaneously. 10-year-old Marcus Chen was the child of Dr. Moore and his wife Linda. Despite his youth, he could solve genetic puzzles that stumped adult scientists and seemed to understand complex biological systems intuitively. "The patterns just make sense to me," Marcus explained when asked how he could redesign cellular structures so easily. "It's like reading a story that's written in the language of life itself." But the hybrid children also faced unique challenges. They aged at different rates than normal humans and sometimes struggled to relate to people who couldn't share their enhanced perceptions. Young Emma Wells, daughter of the engineer David, had developed the ability to see electromagnetic fields around living beings. This let her detect illness and injury, but also meant she was constantly overwhelmed by visual input that others couldn't perceive. "Everything has colors that don't have names," Emma told her father while trying to explain what she saw. "Some colors feel happy and others feel sick, but I don't know how to turn off the seeing." As more children were born from the integration program, it became clear that they represented something entirely new. They weren't just enhanced humans or recreated luminari, but a bridge between species that belonged fully to neither world. Jake watched the growing community of hybrid families with mixed emotions. They had succeeded beyond Zara's original hopes in creating a new form of life. But he wondered what place these beings would have in a galaxy that was often hostile to anything different. The question became urgent when long-range sensors detected unusual energy signatures approaching from the galactic core. The readings matched descriptions from ancient luminary archives of Devourer scout ships. "They found us," Zara said with exhausted resignation when the data was confirmed. "The genetic mixing has created a beacon that they cannot ignore." Captain Torres immediately began organizing defensive preparations. But conventional human weapons would be useless against enemies who could corrupt biological tissue and turn living beings into extensions of their own will. "Our only hope lies with the hybrids," Zara told the emergency council that Jake convened. "They carry resistances in their genes that might protect them from devourer infection. But they are so few and so young." Jake looked around at the people who had trusted him to lead them into this unknown future. Volunteers who had risked everything to help an alien species. Scientists who had pushed the boundaries of human knowledge. Parents who had chosen to give their children abilities that separated them from normal humanity. "And then we teach them to fight," he said with quiet determination. "And we pray that love and courage will be enough to face the darkness coming our way." The approaching fleet grew larger on their sensors each day. What started as 3 ships became 12, then 24. The Devourers were not coming alone, but bringing an entire invasion force that had been hidden in the dark spaces between galaxies. Captain Helen Torres arrived with the largest battle fleet that humanity had ever assembled. 200 ships from every colony and military base in human space came together around Earth's moon. But even this massive force looked small compared to what was coming toward them. "We've analyzed the enemy ships using data from Luminari archives," Torres reported to Jake and the Research Council. "Each Devourer vessel is essentially a living creature the size of a city. They can repair damage instantly and adapt their weapons to whatever we throw at them." The news got worse. As more intelligence came in, the Devourers had not spent their long hibernation idle. They had been evolving and improving their biological weapon systems. The force approaching Earth was far more dangerous than what had destroyed the Luminari civilization. "They learn from every species they consume," Zara explained while reviewing the tactical data. 3,000 years ago, they absorbed the genetic patterns of 47 different civilizations. Now they carry the combined military knowledge and biological advantages of all those conquered peoples. Dr. Hayes studied the medical files with growing alarm. According to these records, the Devourers use genetic viruses as weapons. They can rewrite the DNA of enemy soldiers and turn them into allies during battle. This meant that human numerical advantages would disappear quickly once fighting began. Every soldier who fell to Devourer infection would join their forces and attack his former comrades, but the hybrid children showed promising signs of natural immunity. When exposed to samples of the genetic virus in laboratory tests, their enhanced immune systems fought off the infection completely. Young Marcus Chen had grown rapidly during the crisis and now appeared to be in his late teens despite being only 2 years old biologically. His accelerated development seemed to be triggered by the approaching danger. The virus can't rewrite our DNA because we have built-in protections, Marcus explained to the adult scientists in language that seemed far too advanced for someone so young. Our Luminari genes recognize the Devourer patterns and create antibodies automatically. Emma Wells had also aged quickly and developed new abilities. She could now see the electromagnetic signatures of the approaching enemy ships and track their movements across vast distances. "They're not just flying through space," she reported with disturbing calm for someone who looked like a teenager. "They're eating everything in their path. Asteroid space dust, even light itself, gets absorbed into their hull." The hybrid adults were also changing as the crisis deepened. Amy Sullivan's integration with computer systems had become so complete that she could operate dozens of defense platforms simultaneously. Using only her thoughts, Rick Barnes discovered that his bioelectric piloting abilities worked on any spacecraft, including captured alien vessels. This opened up possibilities for using Devour technology against them if they could somehow acquire intact enemy ships. Captain Torres organized the defense into 3 layers. The outer perimeter would be conventional human warships trying to slow down the enemy advance. The middle layer consisted of orbital defense platforms around Earth and the Moon armed with every weapon that human science could devise. The inner layer was the most experimental. Hybrid volunteers would pilot specially modified ships that combined human engineering with Luminari biotechnology. These vessels could adapt and evolve during combat just like living creatures. "It's our only chance," Torres admitted during a strategy meeting with Jake and the other leaders. "Conventional tactics won't work against an enemy that can turn our own people against us." Zara had grown weaker as more volunteers completed their genetic integration. She was literally giving her life force to create as many hybrids as possible. Before the enemy arrived, Jake was amazed by her dedication but worried that she was pushing herself beyond all limits. "You need to rest," he told her after finding her collapsed in the laboratory again. "We need you alive to guide us through the coming battle." "My individual survival doesn't matter," she replied with the stubborn determination that Jake had come to know well. "What matters is ensuring that some trace of Luminari knowledge survives to help the next generation." The children were the most remarkable part of the defense preparations. Despite their youth, they understood the stakes better than many adults and volunteered for dangerous missions without hesitation. Marcus had developed an ability to communicate directly with Luminari biotechnology. He could wake up dormant systems in ancient artifacts and coax more power from biomechanical devices than their original designers had thought possible. "The old machines remember their purpose," he explained while reactivating a Luminari defense satellite that had been drifting in space for millennia. They were waiting for someone who could speak their language. Emma's electromagnetic sight let her predict enemy movements and detect weaknesses in their living ships. She became invaluable for targeting the most vulnerable points on Devourer vessels. "Their bio-armor is strongest at the front but thin near the engine chambers," she reported after studying the approaching fleet. "If we can hit them there, we might be able to disable whole ships." As the enemy drew closer, disturbing reports came from the outer colonies. Settlements on the frontier began going silent one by one. When scout ships investigated, they found empty worlds where all organic matter had been consumed. "They're not just conquering territory," Dr. Hayes observed with horror. "They're sterilizing entire planets and absorbing every living thing into their collective biology." The first actual contact with the Devourers came when a single scout ship broke away from the main fleet and approached Mars. It was smaller than the capital vessels, but still the size of a human battleship. Captain Torres ordered a squadron to intercept and engage. The results were devastating for humanity. Conventional weapons barely scratched the enemy's living hull, while its bioelectric fields turned 3 human ships into mindless extensions of its will. The infected crews turned their weapons on their former allies before the remaining ships could retreat. In less than an hour, the Devourers had added 36 human vessels to their fleet. "We can't fight them with normal tactics," Torres admitted with grim acceptance. "Every ship we lose makes them stronger." But the hybrid volunteers had better success. Rick Barnes led a squadron of biomechanical fighters in a hit-and-run attack on the scout ship. Their living vessels could adapt to enemy countermeasures and resist the genetic infection. "It's like fighting a predator that's used to hunting prey," Rick reported after the successful mission. "When we fight back with weapons, it recognizes the scout ship, gets confused, and makes mistakes." The enemy scout ship was destroyed, but not before transmitting detailed information about human capabilities back to the main fleet. The Devourers now knew about the hybrid defenders and would adapt their tactics accordingly. "The real battle is just beginning," Zara warned as she studied the enemy response patterns. "They will send their most dangerous bioweapons against the hybrids to test our defenses." Jake found himself in command of a defense that seemed impossible. How could a few hundred hybrid children and adults stand against an enemy that had conquered entire civilizations? But looking at the determination in their enhanced eyes, he began to believe they might have a chance. The hybrid families worked together with seamless coordination. Parents and children shared information through bioelectric links that let them function as a single organism when necessary. They had become something greater than the sum of their individual abilities. "We are what the Devourers fear most," young Emma told Jake with confidence that seemed impossible for someone barely 3 years old. "They consume other species, but they cannot truly become them. We are genuinely something new that they have never encountered before." As the main enemy fleet approached the inner solar system, Jake realized that the coming battle would determine more than just humanity's survival. If the hybrids could defeat the Devourers, they would prove that cooperation between species was stronger than consumption and conquest. But if they failed, both human and Luminari genetic patterns would be absorbed into the enemy collective. The Devourers would gain all their knowledge and abilities while adding them to their twisted evolution. The final preparations were completed as the enemy fleet took up positions around Earth. Millions of people on the planet below looked up at the sky and saw alien ships blotting out the stars. The greatest test in human history was about to begin. Zara made one last effort to create more hybrid defenders, but her strength finally failed completely. She collapsed in Jake's arms as her silver skin became translucent and her breathing grew shallow. "Promise me that our children will remember both species that created them," she whispered with her fading mental voice. "They are the future that neither humans nor Luminari could achieve alone." Jake held her close and made that promise, knowing that everything would be decided in the battle to come. The hybrids were humanity's greatest creation and their only hope for survival against the ancient evil approaching from the stars. The battle began at dawn when the first wave of Devourer bioships descended through Earth's atmosphere like a plague of living metal. Their hulls rippled and shifted as they adapted to the planet's environment while releasing clouds of genetic virus designed to turn all organic matter into extensions of their collective will. But the hybrid defenders were ready for them. Marcus Chin had grown into a young man overnight as his accelerated development reached its peak. He stood at the center of the orbital defense platform, coordinating the resistance through bioelectric links with every hybrid fighter in the system. "They're trying to infect our atmosphere," he reported to Jake through their mental connection. But Emma can see their weak points and Rick is leading the fighter squadrons to exploit them. The hybrid ships moved like living creatures dancing between the massive Devourer vessels. Their biomechanical hulls could repair damage instantly while their weapons adapted to penetrate enemy defenses. It was a battle between two forms of evolution with the future of both species hanging in the balance. Amy Sullivan had merged completely with the Earth Defense Network. Her consciousness flowed through every satellite weapon and communication system, giving the defenders perfect coordination. She could predict enemy movements and direct countermeasures within human precision. The Devourers are confused, she reported through the network. They've never faced opponents who could adapt as fast as they do. Their standard tactics aren't working. But the enemy was learning quickly. The larger bioships began producing new types of weapons specifically designed to target hybrid physiology. Acid clouds that could eat through their enhanced immune systems and electromagnetic pulses that disrupted their bioelectric communication. Captain Torres led the conventional human fleet in desperate holding actions to buy time for the hybrids to adjust their defenses. Her ships couldn't damage the enemy directly, but they could serve as decoys and shields to protect the more valuable hybrid fighters. Every minute we keep them busy is another minute for our real weapons to evolve, she told her crews as they flew suicide missions against impossible odds. The turning point came when Zara made her final sacrifice. Even though her body was failing, she used the last of her strength to merge her consciousness with the hybrid network. Her 3,000 years of luminary knowledge flowed into every hybrid mind, giving them access to technologies and strategies that had been lost for millennia. I can see everything now, Marcus said with wonder as his mind expanded beyond human limitations. The patterns, the connections, the way all life is linked together at the deepest level. Emma's electromagnetic sight suddenly encompassed entire star systems. She could track every enemy ship and predict their movements hours in advance. They're not just attacking Earth, she announced with growing alarm. This is the advance force. The main Devourer collective is still coming. Rick's piloting abilities reached incredible heights as he learned to fly ships that were part machine, part living creature. His fighters moved through space like schools of fish, operating as a single organism with perfect coordination. The hybrid children, who had been too young to fight directly, became living computers processing vast amounts of tactical data and finding weaknesses in enemy formations. Their enhanced minds could calculate possibilities and outcomes far beyond normal human capability, but the Devourers had one final terrible weapon. The largest bioship at the center of their fleet began to glow with internal fire. It was preparing to release a genetic bomb that would rewrite the DNA of every living thing on Earth. If that thing goes off, it will turn our entire planet into a Devourer breeding ground, Dr. Hayes warned from her position in the underground command bunker. Jake realized that conventional weapons couldn't stop something that massive. It would require a sacrifice equal to Zara's to save their world. The hybrids would have to use their most dangerous ability, the power to merge their life forces together into a single focused attack. We can do it, Marcus told him with calm certainty. All of us together can create a bioelectric pulse powerful enough to destroy their mothership. But it will use up most of our energy. Some of us might not survive. The hybrid families made their choice without hesitation. Parents and children linked their minds and bodies together, forming a network of consciousness that spanned the entire solar system. They became a single organism dedicated to protecting the worlds they loved. The resulting bioelectric pulse was unlike anything seen in the galaxy. It cut through space like a sword of pure life energy, striking the Devourer mother ship at its most vulnerable point. The ancient biomechanical hull couldn't adapt fast enough to resist the combined will of an entire species fighting for survival. The explosion when the mothership died lit up space brighter than the sun. The shockwave destroyed dozens of smaller Devourer vessels and sent the survivors fleeing back toward the galactic core. For the first time in their long existence, the Devourers had met an enemy they couldn't consume, but victory came at a terrible cost. Half the hybrid defenders had burned out their enhanced nervous systems in the final attack. They survived, but lost most of their special abilities. Returning to something closer to normal human baseline, Zara's physical form finally dissolved completely as her life force merged permanently with the hybrid network. She became part of them forever, ensuring that Luminary wisdom would guide future generations even after her individual consciousness faded. Away. Jake stood on the observation deck of the orbital station, looking out at the debris field where the great battle had been fought. Earth was safe and humanity had survived, but everything was different now. The hybrid survivors were changed by their experience in ways that would take years to fully understand. Marcus approached him, looking older and wiser despite his youth. The intense neural activity had aged him rapidly, but he seemed at peace with the transformation. Zara's dream came true, Marcus said with a smile that reminded Jake of the silver being who had started it all. We're not just rebuilt Luminari or enhanced humans. We're something entirely new that carries the best of both species. In the months that followed, the hybrid families began establishing new colonies throughout human space. They served as bridges between the old human civilization and whatever was coming next. Their children grew up bilingual in both human culture and Luminari biotechnology. Emma Wells became the first hybrid ambassador traveling to other alien civilizations to share the story of cooperation triumphing over conquest. Her electromagnetic abilities let her communicate with species that had never been able to talk to humans before. Rick Barnes led exploration missions to distant galaxies, using biomechanical ships that could travel farther and faster than anything humans had built before. They searched for other species threatened by extinction, offering the same help that humanity had given to Zara. Amy Sullivan founded schools where hybrid and human children learned together. The curriculum included both traditional human subjects and Luminari life sciences, creating a generation that understood the universe in completely new ways. Dr. Hayes established medical centers where hybrid healers worked alongside human doctors. They could cure diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries while learning to treat conditions that were unique to their mixed heritage. Captain Torres became the leader of a new type of military force dedicated to protecting other species from threats like the Devourers. Her ships carried hybrid crews who could adapt to any situation and turn the enemy's own weapons against them. Jake found himself serving as something like a grandfather figure to the growing hybrid community. He had lived through the transformation from the beginning and could help the younger generation understand both their human heritage and their Luminari legacy. Years later, as Jake grew old and prepared to pass leadership to the next generation, he often thought about Zara and the choice she had presented to humanity. By asking for help to rebuild her species, she had given them something far more valuable than advanced technology or enhanced abilities. She had shown them that the future belonged not to any single species, but to those willing to work together and share their strengths. The hybrid children playing in gardens that grew according to Luminari principles while speaking human languages were proof that evolution's greatest achievements came through cooperation rather than competition. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders waiting to be discovered. Somewhere out there, other species were facing extinction or struggling with challenges that seemed impossible. The hybrid explorers would find them and offer the same gift that had saved both humanity and the Luminari from oblivion, the gift of hope and the promise that no one had to face the darkness alone.